Former Shadow Home Secretary Anne Widdecombe points to the example of crime-ridden New York's no-nonsense Mayor Rudy Giuliani in the 1990s. His policy allowed police to stop and search suspicious people, make arrests for minor infractions that had been previously ignored, and ramped up sentencing for repeat offenders. So, Anne Widdecombe, do you think the so-called, and I love this policy actually, 3 strikes and you're out, could that be the solution to lawless Britain? Because something dramatic has to change, Anne.
We've tried that before. We tried it in Michael Howard's time, and we tried it with burglary, which was then and is still a massive, accounts for a massive amount of crime. And we tried the 3 strikes and you're out policy with that. That wasn't as effective as we had hoped, as I had hoped, as Michael Howard had hoped. But I think if you look at Giuliani in New York, you've got a very, very different situation. Now, what he proposed was complete zero tolerance from the smallest crime all the way up, obviously, to the more serious ones. But, and this is something I've always said and made very clear, in order to achieve that, Dan, he put 11,000 extra police on the streets of New York. 11,000 in New York. Now, that's one city. Yeah. So even if we could find 11,000 for London, you know, you've got Liverpool, you've got Birmingham, you've got other huge cities where you've got crime problems. So I always say to people, don't just imagine that overnight you can introduce zero tolerance. But what you can do is you can focus on certain crimes. And I would say knife and gun crime are the obvious ones at the moment. And you can say, right, we have absolute zero tolerance of that. If you're caught with a knife, you know, you'll be in court tomorrow morning. If the barristers aren't on strike, you'll be in court tomorrow morning. And you won't be going home tonight. Instead of going out and having a fun evening, you'll actually spend it in custody. Now, until that message gets over, and that does involve a huge amount of stop and search, it won't be taken seriously. And honestly, you can announce all the policies on earth, but unless they're implemented with dispatch and with force, by which I don't mean physical force, but with concentration, unless you actually do that, forget it. You're talking to the skies. And by the way, can I just say something very quickly? I know we've passed on from your previous discussion, but the joy about the Albanian policy is this. They're taking back their own nationals. Now, not even ECHR is going to find it easy to object to a country accepting its own nationals.
So you think it's a good plan?
Oh, I think it's a very good plan. It's not going to solve everything. Of course it isn't. But I think it could make a very major contribution, and particularly in deterrence. I mean, if Albanians know that the instant they arrive on our shore, they're going to be sent back to their own country, then the incentive to pay people traffickers huge amount of money disappears.
I hope so. The thing I can't get my head around with this policy, Anne, is that we know that the vast majority of these illegals who come across the channel, they destroy all of their documentation. They destroy their passports. They throw their mobile phones in the sea. So isn't the issue that if you're Albanian, all you'll do now is you'll say, I've come from Afghanistan?
Somalia or Afghanistan. Yeah, of course you will. But that is where, if we only implemented my policy of detaining all new asylum seekers, you could actually establish their nationality, because do they speak the language of the country they claim to come from? Do they know its geography? Can they say where they lived? Can they describe the area? That is the sort of questioning which we should be doing. I mean, it ain't rocket science, Dan. It really ain't rocket science.
No, indeed. Look, and we are both backing Liz Truss, I guess, with a big dollop of hope, because the country needs hope. But you look at all of these crises, you know, you look at lawless Britain, you look at the energy crisis, you look at the national emergency on the channel, and it is a national emergency. This is not just a crisis. It is an invasion of our country. The problem is she's got to fight on so many fronts, and I understand how difficult that's going to be. I guess one criticism I would have of Liz Truss's campaign, and I think it's been a good campaign, is I haven't really heard her talk tough on law and order. She's expressed her sympathy to the victims and the families of the victims, but I haven't heard her come up with any significant plan other than to keep recruiting the extra police, which is proving really difficult, by the way, because folk don't want to join the police force at the moment.
No, I haven't heard any coherent plan either for law and order or for the NHS. And I think that is true of both candidates. They're dodging the really big ones. And there does need to be a plan for law and order, and it needs to be multifaceted. Yes, we do need more police. Yes, we do need those police to be concentrating on crime and not on wokery and all the rest of it, and not on bureaucracy either, on filling in endless forms. Yes, we do need to focus on certain crimes and really have a blitz on those so that people understand that they're more likely to be caught than not, because the single biggest deterrent to committing crime is that you think you'll be caught. And most people think, with good reason, quite honestly, that they won't be.